You're listening to A Neighbor's Choice Radio, Episode 3. I'm your host, David Gornoski. Today I speak with Mr. Jefferson Slinkard, a friend of mine and a person who experienced the true cost of our unnecessary wars. His father came back from Korea with PTSD and created a lifetime of hell for his family and friends around him.
Way down upon the Swanee River, far, far away. That is where my heart is turning ever. That's where the old folks stay.
Well, I'm here with my friend Jefferson Slinkard, and he's in Arkansas. And I've gotten to know him over the last several months, and I've enjoyed listening to his stories. He's a good writer, and he's a good thinker, and he's hard to categorize. He doesn't fit nicely into any ideological box, and so I really have grown to like his perspective on things because he is kind of a hard to fit, a contrarian type in the sense that there's conservative aspects, there's liberal aspects. He's got a lot of different mixtures, so to speak, of his perspective, but I think it's grounded in the fact that he loves Jesus, and he loves the idea of imitating Jesus, and he wants to share that perspective to those around him from a neighbor's perspective. And that's what we do here on A Neighbor's Choice Radio. We interview people, and we talk to people, and we hear their stories about how they have dealt with violence in their lives, both from a person-to-person basis as well as a systemic way of looking at violence in terms of what governments can do to people and how they affect us generationally with our families. So Jefferson has been very kind to agree to tell his story, and that's all we can do is tell and bear witness to the story that God has given us in our time, and hope that it can be a source of inspiration, a source of admonition for those who are seeking truth in this world. So thanks for coming on the program.
You betcha, David. Thanks for the fine intro there.
Well, I wanted to get into the topic of post-traumatic stress disorder. It's something that I'm not a professional or an expert on how it works, but one of the things that we deal with in this program is the effects of war. We talk a lot about the sacredness of war and how important it is to support our troops, to support whatever new national glory project that our government wants to get us to support.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm not a professional on PTSD either, except my experiences of growing up under a father that had it in spades. From his wartime experience in Korea, Dad was in the 1st Division Marines, the Incheon Landing you probably heard of, and the Chosen Reservoir. They called it the Marines that were there, the chosen few, and it was hell on earth. Just as simple as that. There was a few times my father talked about that war. It wasn't pretty, and it left deep scars in him, and then in turn he laid those scars upon me. and my siblings.
And what would you describe? How would you describe what PTSD is in a nutshell? How do you tell what it is? How it's different from normal high levels of anxiety?
Well, my first thought of PTSD was Tourette's. I thought my father had Tourette's syndrome. He would, and maybe he did. And then the experiences of the war just added to it. But Dad could be fine 1 minute, and anything remotely reminded him of Korea, he would come apart. Mm-hmm. It didn't matter if we were in public, at home. Of course, we never went to church, but except for weddings and funerals, and he could come apart there. It didn't matter.
And what would set him off? What were some of the common things that would set him off to remember the war? Loud noises, or what would it be?
Yeah. Loud noises didn't bother him if he knew it was coming, but if he was surprised by a loud bang, slamming of a door, which us kids did a lot, and that would set him off. So, they say smell is your oldest memory, but I think violence is, because I can remember back to a very, very young age and surprised my mother that I could remember so far back, but it was memories of him coming apart.
Mm. And how early do you remember this in your childhood?
Oh my! The age of 1, year and a half, 2 years. I have lots of memories of his, and probably have some, when I was in the womb of him. Mm. Losing it with Mom, I'm sure. But I can remember with clarity of the age of 2, year and a half.
What was the earliest memory you can recall of this?
We lived in South Arkansas in Chico County, and we were all on a pond bank. And my middle brother Cliff is 13 months younger than me, so he was a little crumb grabber, rugrat,
Yeah.
We were all on this pond bank, and I remember kicking Cliff off, and he rolled into the water. He was crawling around, and Mom and Dad was fishing, and my older sister was there, and I didn't think nothing of it. I was a 2-year-old boy kicking my brother off in the water. And I remember, the reason I remember that is Dad exploded.
And you said 2?
I was 2 then, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that would put my brother, 11, 12 months old.
Mm-hmm. And what happened? Just yelling and physical?
Yeah, I think being jerked around and slapped around, but most of that memory was yelling. Mm-hmm. And being terrified. So that stayed with me all these years, like an old memory of a scent, of the smell.
Mm-hmm. Did you have dreams about these things, these incidences? Did it affect your dreams, your nightmares, that kind of thing?
No, I was a pretty, even keel kid. The stuff I didn't let it get to me too much, I guess, except that it stayed in my memory for all these years. But it all progressed, as I got older. Dad's, I don't know if they call it a disease or not. It's there's definitely symptoms, but it just got worse as he got older and I got older. Mm-hmm. And he treated all of us kids that way. Me more so, being the oldest son.
Yeah.
And my sister some hard times too.
Mm-hmm. And what was there a turning point where it stopped, or there was a breakthrough at some point? Were you able to have some kind of turnaround?
No, it never stopped.
Mm-hmm.
As I got older, he worked us like borrowed mules, and the violence increased, and you know, stand up and take it like a man kind of. He would, box us, knock us, hit us, slap us, and that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so maybe I became somewhat of a calloused child, but there come a time I said, I've had enough of this, and I ran away, one of many times.
Mm-hmm. And you wrote a story about this, a short story about your runaway experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Would you mind kind of sharing just a little bit about what that was like?
Well, there's a couple of them I've wrote about. You want the one about the poke sack of grub, or the?
Yeah.
Well, I was 12 or 13, and we'd had a hard day in the cotton fields, and the yelling and screaming, and Dad just tearing the house apart. And so that night, I knew that day that I was leaving. That night, I took his. He had several horses. I took his favorite horse and best saddle, and a couple old quilts of Mom's, and a little bit of food, and I had a little bit of spending money, not much. And off I went. I was headed west.
And what time did you leave? What was?
Oh, it was late at night. It was after everybody was asleep, because I was terrified of getting caught. Now, if I got caught, it would have been worse.
Mm-hmm.
So it was late.
Was it cold? Was this during the?
No, it was summer. It was school time, but it was the end of cotton season, because you pick cotton in the fall,
Okay. So it wasn't too cold yet.
No, and so I took his favorite horse and saddle and a few provisions and headed west.
And what was your plan in that moment? Were you thinking, I'm done for good, or I want to send a message, or what was going through your head?
No, I was going to find Chester on Gunsmoke or the Rifleman. In my young mind, I was going to ride out and see if I could find them guys.
Yeah. Become a cowboy.
Yeah, of sorts, I guess. I was a plowboy already, so but I got as far as what we call back home the Crowley's Ridge. It's hills out in the floodplain of the Mississippi that was caused by the New Madrid earthquake, and they were about 8-9 miles west of the house. And when I got there, I found an old barn, and I camped out in that barn for 2 weeks.
Mm.
Yeah.
What was that like? Did you just stay in that barn or go explore? Or?
Well, I didn't know it at the time, but that barn belonged to old man Swanner. Swanner's ranch raised cutting horses. And during the day, I would walk over there and watch them work those high-powered animals. And then down the road from there was old man Teague's grocery, a little mom-and-pop store. And I would ride my horse down there to get bologna sandwiches or whatever. And it wasn't long I'd run out of money. And that's probably old man Teague ended up calling a truant officer on me. And that man showed up at that barn one day with a poke sack of grub. And so I wrote a story about that. And actually that old gentleman was one of a few in my life that I'll forever remember because of his kindness and the way he handled the situation.
What'd he do?
He fed me. He fed me.
Yeah. You were hungry. How long had it been since you had eaten?
Gosh, I don't know. I was down to eating probably old poke salad greens or whatnot. I don't know, but I was a hungry kid. But yeah, he shows up, and the sandwiches that he brought were wrapped in Mr. Teague's wrapping paper, so I knew he had been to Teague's grocery to get this food.
Mm-hmm.
And he shows up at the barn, and he commences to talk about his mom and how she took care of him, and he just caused me to open up, and after I'd ate them sandwiches and other stuff. And as I said in my story that I wrote about, I turned myself into him. He didn't have to arrest me,
mm-hmm.
and brought me home.
How long was the drive home? Do you remember?
Oh, it wasn't long. I left my horse there at the barn, and had actually me and my middle brother and Dad went back later to get the horse, and I rode the horse back. But,
so how'd you feel when you saw your parents? What was it like?
David, when I left then, I was gone. Mm-hmm. Even when I come home, I was glad to see my mother, don't get me wrong. Mm-hmm. But it was never the same with my father from then on. There was more different times that I run away, but yeah, I was glad to see my mama, but not my daddy.
Yeah. So it felt like a prison situation for you, and he was the warden.
Oh yeah. And
the more you tried to run away, the more tighter the domination was, huh?
Yeah, tighter the chokehold, you know. Mm-hmm. We were cheap labor for him. I don't mean that to sound so ugly. I mean, Dad, he did have his he did have his good side, and especially looking back on it now, I could see that as Christ said, "Father, forgive them; they know not what they're doing," and that was my dad, and I knew that. I knew that there was something wrong with him. But,
did you see him struggle in terms of wrestling with?
Oh yeah.
Why he was doing the things he was doing?
Oh yeah, man. He would. You could just see you could see it in his face, the struggle of fighting this demon, mm-hmm. and it would bring him to his knees and then just wail, and that's why I like that opening song that you had. Remind me of way down up on the Swanee River. Dad would wail over this torment he was suffering from.
Mm-hmm.
And it was
he did this openly in front of people, or is this always?
Oh yeah, but mostly at home. I mean, mm-hmm. in public, his violence would be on anyone around. But,
even strangers, or?
Oh yeah. Dad was. Oh man, my father was. He wasn't pleasant to be around, even by strangers.
So he didn't have a two-face about him. What you saw is what you got, basically.
Oh yeah. Dad was not no, he wasn't two-faced at all. What you seen is what you got. But he would often take out his frustration in public on us kids, mm-hmm. but on occasion on strangers too. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Did he have a creative, positive outlet for his?
He did have a what?
Did he have a creative or a positive outlet that he could channel his attentions and energy to, and it would bring out the best in him? Sometimes people, when they're singing or when they're writing stories or fishing or something, it brings out the best of them. Was there a side that would open up in certain situations like that?
Yeah. Dad was, in a lot of ways, he was a frustrated genius. he was a farmer most of his life, farming and heavy equipment construction. We moved a lot, one farm to another. And, but he would find, he loved to play chess. He taught us kids how to play chess at a very young age. Mm-hmm. And so he found peace in that, and horses. He loved horses. And planting things, flowers and trees. All of his life, he planted flowers and trees, and he took great pleasure in watching things grow. Mm-hmm. Although he didn't like to see us grow, I think. Mom told me after he died that he was always a little jealous of me. I said, "Why, Mom? Why would Dad be jealous?" And she said, "He just struggled with that, son. That watching you bloom and become this wonderful log home builder, and your dad was always a tractor shed builder, just slap up something." You know? And so he was a little jealous of me. Mom said, and she just told me that not long ago. And so, but it progressively got worse, and as I got older, I started fighting back, which made it worse. And then I run away at the age of 15 or 16 to Houston, Texas, where we had farmed south of there, farmed soybeans the year before. And I wrote another story about that. I left on my motorcycle with a big old flashlight taped on the front for a headlight. It didn't have a headlight, you know.
Wow. Did you get stopped or anything?
Well, I run out of gas on I-40 before I-30 south to Texarkana. I was on I-40 before Little Rock, and I run out of gas, and I'm pushing at night. Now this is the winter time in January. Mm. And I'm pushing my motorcycle down the freeway. Blue lights come on behind me, and it's a state trooper. He signals me to come back to the car, and I do, and he points over to the passenger side to get in, because it's really cold. And I get in that warm car with him, and everything I have on is from Bibb's Army Surplus. That was old man Bibb in Truman, Arkansas, had an Army Surplus store. So I had combat boots on, fatigues, breeches, shirt, field jacket, and I even at 14 I was shaving. I matured early, so I had a stubble, a beard, and he thinks I'm a soldier.
Yeah.
So I play that. I said, yeah, I'm headed home to Houston, Texas. I don't have a driver's license or anything, and he never asked for one. Mm-hmm. But he helps me push my motorcycle up off of the freeway and hide it in the weeds, and takes me to the next exit, helps me get a gallon of gas, and we're pulling back out on the freeway going back east towards my motorcycle, and it's the wee hours of the morning now. They're sitting in the middle of the freeway, both lanes, with a tractor trailer idling. Mm-hmm. And he says, "What the hell?" And he pulls off, and we both get out. And he goes to the driver's door, and I go to the passenger. The driver's asleep, laying over the steering wheel, in the middle of the freeway. Mm. And so anyway, he wakes him up, tells him to get off the road, and then we get back in. I put the gas in my motorcycle, and I thank him, and off I go. Well, I have not slept. It's a long drive from Truman, Arkansas to Houston, Texas. And I haven't slept the whole time. And I missed a turn and end up in downtown Houston, Texas, and make a wrong turn. And on each corner is a Harley Davidson cop. And one of them hollers at me and waves me over. And now he asked for an ID, and I don't have one. And so he takes me in, and back then, I don't know what it is now, but back then the jail was a multi-story building. 8, 9, 10 stories, I think.
Mm-hmm.
They take me to one of the top floors. I never knew which, and there wasn't no windows in this place. And they want to know who I am, why no ID, and yada yada. And I don't tell them nothing, David. And they keep me incarcerated for 30 days, and every week they would move me into a little rougher area. The first week was solitary. No, I was in a room by myself, a little 8 by 10 or something, But
did you have a window?
Nah, no window. Well, so, on the door, yes.
Mm-hmm.
The door to the other cell, but no window to the outside. No.
Mm-hmm. No, this was like a solid door, not bars.
Not bars, no.
Yeah.
Well, now the door had a window on it, yes, but not there was not a window to the outside world.
Mm-hmm. So what's it like when you're being walked into that room?
I knew what an animal felt like that was caged. It's the only way I can describe it.
Did you feel anger, or did you feel like shock, or like a rebellious spirit, like this is ridiculous, or fear, or what was it going through your head?
I think all of it.
Mm-hmm.
After the first week in solitary, the second week they put me in with some a rougher crowd of boys, and we got 1 hour a day to go into a break room, and so there was a lot of fighting, and then and every week this cowboy policeman wore cowboy boots and a cowboy hat, and he had all my possessions on his desk, and he was the first one to talk to me when I first come in. He wanted to know who I was, what and why, and all this. And I wouldn't tell him anything. And so after the first week of solitary, brings me back into his office, and he's got his boots up on his desk, and he has my old hunting knives and whatnot. And he said, "You ready to talk?" And I said, "No, sir." He said, "Aren't you worried about your mama or anything like that?" And I said, "I may be worried about my mama, but it's my father, it's my daddy that I ain't too worried about." Oh, so he's seen a little spark maybe there, but I wouldn't give him no more.
Mm-hmm. Now, what was your strategy for not saying anything?
I didn't want to go home.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I didn't go back, but there was no cell phones back then,
Mm-hmm.
This was the early 70s, and so everything was the old dial phone to call home or whatever. So he puts me in the area with the older boys and the rougher crowd, and we did a little bit of fighting.
Mm-hmm.
So a week of that, I guess he thought it would loosen me up, but I wouldn't give him any more information.
You must have won.
Well, no, I was black. I was black and blue. Yeah,
So the black and blue that you received in that situation, in a cage that you said you felt like an animal, comparatively felt like freedom compared to back home.
There you go. You got it. See.
Wow.
That comparison, I mean, it wouldn't hold comparison to what it was like being at home.
Wow.
I mean, I could handle anything they dished out. And so the third week progressively got worse. The fourth week, I was so battered when they took me back into his office. I was ready to give him Mom's number, and he calls, and Mom answers the phone, and I don't know, a day or two later, Dad and my brother Cliff come down and get me, and we load my motorcycle up and head back, and not a word said all the way home. Mm. So that was, kind of the beginning of the end of any chance of bonding with my father. Shortly after that, I left permanently, and then ended up in Idaho, in the logging woods, and then a few years there, and then I went into the service into Germany. Did my time there, and then when I got home, I began to drink a lot, and I guess I may have learned that in Germany. I don't know.
Yeah.
But drinking and violence is not a good mix, you know.
Right.
And that got me in some trouble with the law back down in Chico County, down in South Arkansas. And
this is when you're out of the military, then.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. This is after the military, and I'm dealing with this all this rage and frustration of why, why. And I never been hunting with my father, never been fishing with my father, never been in a church with my father except funerals and weddings. And so, one thing really bothered me, David, was seeing, and it still does a little bit today, it's something I deal with, is seeing a father and son relationship, a strong father and son relationship. I have friends that get along well with their dad, they do stuff together.
Yeah.
And I really struggle with that. Why them, not me? Why? Mm-hmm. There's a lot of whys questions in this life. And, yeah.
Did it get better as you became your own adult and your own man?
Yeah, you know what? There was sometimes 3 or 4 years I would never see my dad, or we wouldn't talk, And there was, I may have mentioned this to you about when he shot me. It was an anniversary of the Incheon landing. I don't know if it's the 40th anniversary or what. But I happened to show up at his house after work. I would drive by his place, and there were times there where we could have a beer or two together, and then I'd go on home. And I don't know if I want to tell this story or not. But I'll make a long story short. He was reliving some of the past in Korea, and I happened to come by at a bad time, and I should have left. And
yeah.
He ended up taking a shotgun and shooting me.
And he hit you, or where'd you?
Oh yeah, yeah. I ran and jumped into my truck right when he shot, and I ducked, but it got my right hand on the steering wheel and left a very large pattern of birdshot. If it was buckshot, I wouldn't be here. But it was birdshot, probably number 7 shot, because it left one hell of a pattern. And
so what'd you do at that point? Did you just drive yourself to the hospital, or what are you doing at that point?
No, I didn't go to the hospital. I took a knife and dug the BBs out. But after I got away from there. But now he chased me down the road, still shooting at me. I'm in my truck, and he's in his, and it's a single shotgun. So it takes him. He's all over the place, but he's still shooting at me. And so finally I outrun him, and I do call the county cops, and they meet me at an intersection out in the country, and they take pictures of my truck, pictures of my hand and the blood, and they want to go out and arrest him. And I said, no, you're not going to. They said, well, we still need to go by there and check on him. I said, well, I'm not pressing charges. And, they didn't arrest him. Contrary to what a lot of people think. About if gunplay takes place, somebody's going to jail. That's not always true. You have to press charges. And in this case, they wanted me to press charges, and I said, no, I wouldn't. So there was a 4-year period after that. We didn't talk. We didn't do holidays or nothing. I just stayed away from him.
Did he apologize?
No, never in his life. No, the only thing he ever apologized for was for working me so hard. He said, hell, there wasn't no books on how to raise kids back then. Mm-hmm. And he said, I just did the best I knowed how, he didn't say I'm sorry. He said, I know I worked you too hard. And so that was, he said that over a beer. We were drinking beer. And I said, that's the best apology I ever got. And I said, okay, appreciate that, Pop.
What was his explanation for his rages? Did he try to explain that away somehow?
No, he never, even on his deathbed, he wasn't apologetic for anything.
He didn't have an excuse or say, it's just, I don't know what goes over me or something?
No, he never talked about it. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But,
so you never felt like you had that sense of closure with him?
No.
Yeah.
No, none of us did. And that's another curious thing to me. Me and my siblings stood there. We had a hospital bed brought to the house, so he died right there in his living room with us standing around his bed. And we kind of did a vigil. He lasted 18 days from the time the VA sent him home. And so somebody was always there, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And then as it got closer and closer, we were all there, and I think he knew that he never confessed to believing in God. He didn't like the word Jesus even mentioned, or love. Never heard that word from him, love. And but I think there at the end, he seen what God is, or was, or is, yes. And it was his offspring standing around his deathbed with no hatred towards him. None of us hated him. And but he went peacefully into the night, man. There was I felt some, what do you call that? I felt some I felt good about it. I'm trying to think of the word for that. And I think we all did. My sister's the only one that cried. But, she was always a little...
You felt good about the fact that it was over, or the fact that he had that peace?
That he had that peace of us, of his olive branches standing around him with no animosity or hatred towards him. Mm-hmm. And him knowing that we knew that he knew that we knew that he knew that he was an asshole all of his life. And so, I mean, I told you the story about the sesquicentennial wagon train. Bill Clinton, Governor Clinton, made Dad the wagon master to take that 1,750-mile journey around the state of Arkansas. in commemoration of its 150th birthday.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, and Dad drank heavy then. And so, oh my goodness, I got every newspaper printed on that wagon train.
Mm-hmm.
But, yeah, that would be a story for another time, maybe.
Were his parents abusive to him?
No, his dad was a cotton farmer all of his life, and his mother was just a wonderful woman. And Granddad,
there was no evidence or suggestions that he had a tough childhood himself.
Well, tough. Yeah,
I mean, in terms of emotional, psychological treatment by his.
No, according to his oldest sister, my Aunt Jeannie, it was basically a normal, hard life of growing up on a cotton farm. You know, they didn't know what poverty was. You don't know what poverty is if you live in it. You know.
Did he have any traumatic experiences or something of betrayal, or when he was a young man, a young adult?
Not according to his. He had 8 brothers and sisters.
What did they think of him growing up? What did they say about him as a boy?
Well, Dad was the oldest boy. Aunt Jeannie, the oldest sibling.
Mm-hmm.
And Dad, the oldest boy by 15 years. Uncle Bob came next, but no, he was, may have been wound a little tight. He played football in school, and everything he did, he tried to achieve the highest he could on it, you know. But
so kind of a perfectionist.
Somewhat.
Mm-hmm.
Except when it comes to slapping together tractor sheds. He, I didn't know what a level was. You know, I'm talking about a level to plumb and level a building.
Yeah.
I didn't know what a level was till I got out of the military.
Mm-hmm.
He'd eyeball it and say, nail it, you know, when we were building tractor sheds or whatever. But yeah, he was a perfectionist in some ways. And one thing, you know, I want to add to this, that it wasn't all terror and it wasn't all bad. As long as we did what we were told, all of this work and drudgery, he would let me and my brothers do whatever we wanted. We'd build tree houses, we could do. He'd let us take the truck, you know, the story of driving on the railroad tracks. Of course, he didn't know we were doing that at the time, but, you know, we were driving vehicles at the age of 11, 12, 10, 11, 12.
Wow.
And, of course, it was all rural country roads back then. And, hell, if we run off in the ditch and tore something up, he didn't get upset over that kind of stuff. Bending, damaging sheet metal didn't bother him. I don't know any other way to explain that. Do you understand what I mean?
Yeah. So it was just basically war triggering that you identify moments that triggered that anxiety from the war, from seeing, you said that he saw his friends torn apart.
Oh yeah. He did talk a lot about that. There was a few. Actually, what he talked the most about in Korea was what brought him peace. It was peaceful things. Him and his platoon seeing smoke off in the distance, and of course, in the military, you have to head towards danger, not away. So they head towards it, and he said in the woods, a small clearing, was an old man over a cooking fire stirring something in a big pot. He said we came up on him, scared him to death. Dad said, you know, you could tell right off this old man had never seen white people or people like us in his whole life, and he was living in a primitive area, you know, no electricity, no roads, nothing. But he described that story, how they shared a meal with this old man, and with artillery going off, you know, 30, 40 miles away, you could hear it. And
this man was unknowing of the war? He was in his own world, or he was friendly?
No. The old man knew there was a war going on, but not immediately around his place. You know, it's that part of Korea was somewhat like the Ozarks, Dad said.
Yeah.
Mountainous, hardwoods.
So he didn't really have a side either way, that guy?
No, he didn't know.
Wow.
I mean, it was the first time he had seen foreign soldiers. But a few times Dad talked about the really bad stuff was late at night when I was a little boy. I'd lay in bed with him, and he would monotone what I described as a monotone trance. He would lay there and talk in a monotone, almost as if I wasn't even there. But Dad was he eventually became a corporal, but he was the third man on a mortar crew. He carried a base plate and 6 mortar rounds, 3 on his chest, 3 on his back, a drop over vest he carried. And all 3 of the guys carried that many rounds. The one carried the tripod, and the other carried the tube. Dad said the base plate saved his life, and it was thick enough it could deflect shells, bullets, you know. But he said the Chinese, you know, Korea, we fought the Koreans until we pushed them up to the Yadu River, and Chinese were afraid we were going to come over into China, so that's when the mob, the deluge begun. And Dad said they were very good with small arms fire and mortar rounds. But he watched, oh man, many of his buddies die and wounded, disintegrated, some of them, you know, blown apart. But he would never go and see those kind of movies, like Saving Private Ryan. No. He didn't want to be reminded of that. And so I think that PTSD, which he wasn't treated, you know, back in the 50s, they didn't even know what it was. And I think PTSD can be handed down. The VA has diagnosed me with it. And even though I was in the service, I didn't see what he's seen, you know.
Yeah.
And I think
the loud noises and things like that trigger.
Oh yes. And Ava, my wife, can tell you that if she walks upon me and I don't know it, I'll jump. Mm-hmm. I spook easily, and that's from shit. I mean, Dad would sometimes sneak up behind me and just knock the hell out of you. Mm. Well, you do that enough to a young boy, you're gonna make him gun shy, you know, and that's the story of my life.
Do you struggle with a lot of rage from that? Is that part of the PTSD that you have, that feeling of anger?
Yeah, I don't have it anymore, but, you know, I went through a 30-year marriage. I was never violent towards my first wife, but I was violent. I mean, I would rage, mm-hmm. Just like Dad did. I was doing the same crap he did, but my father never struck my mother either. Mm-hmm. Only us kids. So I'm sure I put my first wife through hell, and with the drinking too. But then my second wife saved me. Mm-hmm. Christ in her saved me, you might say. Uh, I don't hear well, but I heard a train. Is there a train near you?
There might be, yeah. I think so. Yep, that's a train. You got good hearing.
No, actually, I have very poor hearing, but some things I can hear. Some I can't. But I got my headphones on, that helps too. I would add that, and I've mentioned before, this whole national patriotic flag waving rah-rah love country before God stuff, I learned at a young age. That's another thing my father handed down to us. Learned at a young age that it's all BS. Yeah, he said them. Can you cuss on here?
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, he said them son of bitches sent me to war to die. And so Dad never trusted government, civil, federal, or otherwise, from his experience in Korea. He said it's all BS. They're going to Dad was against Vietnam. Dad was anti-war after his experiences there. He never owned an American flag, never waved a flag, never put a flagpole up, never celebrated Flag Day, Veterans Day, none of that stuff. He hated it. Mm-hmm. He said he never wore them hats with all that cluster. I was a Korean War vet. He said the men that wear those hats didn't see what it was like. Hmm. I had a saying from Eisenhower. I should have pulled that up. I wanted to tell you about, but only a soldier that has seen war can will tell you that it's not worth it.
Yeah. I say enough is enough, I mean, the evangelicals, Christians, whatever stripe, color, creed, whatever they are, I can't speak to everyone because some people have different creeds that seem to justify violence, and for them I can only speak to our common humanity, but for my fellow people who call themselves imitators of Jesus, we have to stop this. We cannot continue to be so careless to sanction and blockade and drone strike and saber rattle. Yes. Because this is an example of the hidden sacrifices that we are. The blood's on our hands, the suffering's on our hands, the generational brokenness, bitterness, the anger, the rage, the cycles of revenge, the cycles of abuse. That's on our country's hands.
Oh yes, absolutely.
And until the church can deal with that face to face and repent of it, it has no reason to call itself the Church of Christ.
I agree, 100%. Where is Matthew 5, the Beatitudes? It's not preached from the pulpit.
Yeah.
This whole picture of Jesus coming back and his robe's going to be stained in blood and killing his enemies, that has to stop. And I see it dying a slow death, a slow agonizing death. It's not dying fast enough, in my opinion, but that needs to go, and the true message of Christ, which was anti-violence, anti-war. Mm-hmm. And he showed with his action. Now, and that's not told enough either to people from the pulpit. This was God, the Creator, that came down in the flesh and became us. He put on this earth suit and lived it for 33 years, and and he did the dirty. He did it.
Yeah.
And showed us, look, I'm leaving this with you. Here's the blueprints. Well, man, over 2,000 years now, we can't read them blueprints. Or we're reading them the wrong way. I think so. Mm-hmm.
Well, it's just it's one of those things where you think it's about time we grew up. Especially, that's my message. I wish I could speak to every pastor and say, listen, do not call yourself a preacher of Jesus if you cannot make this an essential priority in terms of teaching and educating and equipping those who come to your organization.
Absolutely.
On the need to vehemently oppose any war of aggression. Now, I understand if we are being invaded, that there's room for, if there's someone dropping a nuclear bomb, to stop that with a nuclear shield defense.
Yes.
I understand if there's a marauding army trying to rape and pillage everything in sight in America, that we would be within our grounds to make sure they don't get their ships unloaded of their men when they get here.
Mm-hmm.
But apart from those scenarios, this idea that we need to attack Iraq because Saddam looked at us wrong and did this and that and tortured people. See, that's the thing. They always use a twisted view of the gospel. They always say, well, this Satan, Saddam in this case, he tortured and mutilated many people in his land. And so because we are defenders of victims, they take a twisted gospel, right? We're supposed to stand on the side of victims. So they say, we'll stand on the side of victims and we will use violence to do so. Well, that's the most twisted, perverted cross I could ever imagine.
Well, it creates more victims.
The church has no need to ever preach to the culture about reforming its ways until it preaches Jesus, which is the total renunciation of aggression and revenge.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And I hope that this is the message that we can speak to churches across this country of 300-something million people, 70% of which consider themselves followers of Jesus, that they would finally look face to face at who they're following. And this isn't even a hard thing. I'm not asking people to follow Jesus in the little things we can't see. We can't tell how they treat behind the scenes. They're false, right?
Right.
But at least you cannot do it in the sense of voting for people on both sides of the aisle that say they're going to continue sanctions and wars and drone strikes against people who have not deliberately, specifically intended to harm us.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just talking about American interests in a vague sense, like, well, they want to do something to our oil. No. That's not grounds to be a Christian and kill someone because they're going to mess up the currency or some garbage like that. That's grounds for being a pagan imperialist.
Mm-hmm.
And until the church can see that the war and these things are another religion, not just some vacuous, I can have my Christian hat and then I have my politics hat. No, it's a form of religion. It's a sacrificial religion that is at war with the kingdom of heaven.
Well, a good example, one of the many online ministers I listen to sometimes mentioned, he gave a simple example of a church with one flagpole. He said, imagine that flagpole and you'll see them, American flag on the top and the church flag below it. He said, reverse that. Put the church flag on top. And he said, you will be reported within a few hours. Somebody's going to say something. And he said, that right there tells you where our priorities are. It's in nationalism, not in God. And so we can't, as a nation, call ourselves a Christian nation.
Mm-hmm. That's very good. Well, I appreciate your time.
Mm-hmm.
And I appreciate the discussion and the things that you shared. And I hope that it can be something that speaks for itself, the things you've said, the stories you've told, and something that can impact people in a positive way in their own lives, in their own stories, their own experience with the brokenness of war and the generational poison that it creates, that people so carelessly, stupidly turn their eyes away from. 2,000 years after Jesus said, enough.
Yeah, and we're still
It's finished.
We're still making more PTSD victims.
That's right, and no one talks about it. No one wants to deal with. They talk about it in a patronizing way, like, oh, poor soldier victims. Let's get them psychological help. No, that's not the solution. The solution is to stop putting them in that situation to begin with.
Yeah, the cause and effect. Yeah, David, appreciate it, man. Enjoyed it.
Thanks. I appreciate it too. Take care.
Okay.
With my brother, happy was I. Whoa, take me to my kind old mother. There let me live and die. All the world is sad and dreary. Everywhere I roam. Oh, Lordy, how my heart grows weary, far from the old folks at home. Oh, Lordy, how my heart grows weary, far from the old folks at home.